Beautiful. So I'm going to be covering how to get whatever it is that you want in life, right? So whether that's wealth, whether that's freedom, whatever it is to you, because obviously everyone's got different goals, different aspirations, and different things they want to achieve, and everyone's definition of success is different, right? Like it looks different to everyone. But it's all based on the foundation of similar things, right? You need money to have access to freedom. You need money to have access to all these kinds of things. So the number one thing that we need to do before we do anything else is we need to understand what success is. What does it actually mean to you? What does it look like? And then we can base off our understanding of what success is, how we're going to go about getting it, right? The best definition that I've ever seen of success is that success is the realization of a worthy ideal, right? Which means success is your ability to start to actualize a worthy goal, right? So in order to then become successful, what do we need? We need a goal, right? In order to be successful, we need one thing, which is a goal, right? Because if we don't actually know where we're going or what we're doing, how can we get there? It's impossible, right? This is the thing I always use to describe it is if you start flying a plane without a destination, what's going to happen? You're just going to crash because you don't know where the fuck you're going. And it's the same with business. It's the same with life. If you don't know where you're going, then you're not going to become successful, right? So when I speak to anyone, most people at the moment are just walking around like accidents. You don't have a clear goal. You don't have a clear vision of what you actually want from life. You don't know what you want your life to look like. Thus, you just don't know what actions to take, so you stay where you are, which is typically not where you want to be, right? So the biggest thing with this is you need to become intentional, right? You need to become intentional with what you're doing, why you're doing it, and not only have a clear goal, but understand why you want that goal, right? So a lot of people, when I say like, what's your goal? A typical thing is like, oh, I want to be rich. I want freedom. But how rich? How rich? Why that rich? Is 100K enough? Is $1 million enough? Why do you want that much? Do you want that or do you want because it'll make you happy? So are you equating money and happiness? Because it's not the same thing, right? So right now, life is probably happening to you, but it isn't supposed to be that way, right? You're supposed to happen to life, but you're just not being intentional. And this is something that I'm guilty of, right? Up until 22 years old, I was just working in a construction job. I wasn't smart enough, like, with school to go to university, so then I just ended up in a trade, right? But I didn't want to be in a trade. It's just kind of that I was just floating through life. Most people just, like, float through life like a leaf in the wind, right? That's just how most people go about life. But it doesn't have to be that way. So in order for us to become successful, we need intention, we need courage, and courage is the opposite of non-conformity, right? So you guys all know sitting there right now that if you conform to what society deems normal, to what everyone else is doing, you are going to get the same result as everyone else, which is working a job, which is doing something you don't want to be doing. So in order to be successful, what do we need? We need courage, which is the willingness to not conform, the willingness to do something different, to take different actions, to have a different mindset, to be intentional. Then we can start to actualize what we actually want, right? And you need a goal, like we spoke about, right? So we need a goal, we need an idea of what we want from life, and then we need to approach that with intention, with aggression, and with the willingness to have courage and to not conform. So now this is where everything starts for you guys. If you're currently just in a job you don't like, or if you're just literally getting started with your entrepreneurial journey, whatever it may be, then the very first thing that you need is to get clear on your goal, or as I like to call it, your vision, right? So what this looks like is we can then start to ingrain that into our life. We need to remember it every day. We need to know the daily inputs that we need to actually achieve day by day in order to achieve that goal, right? So if you want to make $1 million, how much money do you need to make every year? How much money do you need to make every month, every week, every day? And what actions are you going to take that's going to allow you to make that money so that you can achieve that goal, right? Which we would call a plan, right? And this is where a lot of people get fucked up, is they start trying to start a business, or they start trying to learn this or learn that, but they've not even got a goal or a vision, right? So they're trying to execute on the plan, but they don't know where the plan is taking them. Does that make sense? Beautiful. So let's say that the goal is to make $1 million, right? Because I believe anybody can make $1 million if you just put your mind to it, right? The only understanding that we really need in order to achieve that goal is that we need to adopt the traits, habits, beliefs, and skill sets of someone who can make $1 million, right? If we want to make $1 million, we need to be the type of person who can make $1 million. So how do we do that? We need to adopt the traits, habits, beliefs, and skill sets of someone who can do that, right? But you're still broke and retarded. So how do we do that? Let me explain to you guys how it works. So this is how I always tell people to go about casting their vision. And this is pretty much what I did when I first started. And this was really the thing that allowed me to start to kind of curate and design the exact life that I'm living now. And I want you guys to remember, like, 2 years ago, I was dead broke. I had no money. I had not traveled. I'd not done anything. I'd not put my face on the internet. I had literally nothing, right? The very first step for me for leaving a construction job, being like a nobody, having no money, no motion, no nothing, to being where I am now was this right now. So if you're going to take notes on anything throughout this entire thing, let it be this, because this is the foundation, right? So when you cast your vision, we need to design our dream life. So on your piece of paper, on one side, write me, and on the other side, write my life, right? Because we're going to design two different things that's going to be the forecast for the next couple years of your life, right? Under each of these, you're going to write I have, and then what you have. I own, what you own, and what you are, right? So under me, it would be like, I am this weight, I am this charismatic, and you're going to basically create an alter ego of yourself in your head, and you're going to write it in prophetic tense, meaning you're writing it down as if you had already achieved it. And when you do this, you're writing down exactly who you want to be on the me side, and on the my life side, you're writing down exactly what you want your life to look like. Okay? So now, but within the next 1 to 2 days, you guys should have a crystal clear vision of what you're going to look like a year from now, 2 years from now, and a crystal clear vision of what your life is going to look like a couple years from now. Because remember, if we don't have a clear vision and a clear understanding of what we want this stuff to look like, how the fuck are we going to get it? Now, we don't know what it looks like. We don't know how we're going to get it. We're just taking steps and just throwing shit at the wall. We all know this doesn't work, right? And there's an argument to be made that pretty much if any of you guys aren't where you want to be right now, it's because you've not spent enough time sitting down and either looking at what you want from life, or you've not spent enough time working towards what you want. But this is typically where people fall apart, is there's a lack of attention, there's a lack of vision, okay? So we are designing the ideal version of ourselves and the ideal version of our lives in prophetic tense as if it would already happened, right? Then this is what I did to basically become the version of myself I wanted to be. I created an alter ego in my head. His name was Marcelo. He looked like pretty much what I look like now. At the time, I had long hair. I was super skinny. I was pale. And then I had this vision of myself that was like the version of me that did everything that he was supposed to do, whether he felt like it or not, right? And I had a clear vision of what that would look like, what he would look like physically, how he would act, how he would be perceived by other people, everything, right? And then what I did was I had him in my head and I competed with him. When I didn't feel like going and training martial arts, I said, what would he do? He would do it, right? And by competing with him day in, day out, over time, I started to become him, right? Does that make sense? Oliver.
Yeah, just a quick one. So is that considered like an anti-vision, what you just mentioned?
An anti-vision in what sense?
The person you don't want to become, like the person that you are now,
right?
With your lack of, achieving your goals. So currently, right now, is my anti-vision. not achieving my dream life,
Yep.
living 9 to 5, that would be the anti-vision you create. Would that be
Yeah,
correct?
I mean, if you're not happy with where you're at right now, then yes.
Yep.
But not even focusing on that. The main focus is creating the vision, right? Like, what is the Oliver what does he look like? How does he act? How is he perceived by the world around him? What does he look like? And if you can have that live in your head, and then whenever you feel like doing something or not doing something, or whenever you feel like, skipping a workout, or whenever you feel whatever, you ask yourself, what would that alter ego do? And then you compete with that. And then when you start to compete with it, you start to become it. And then inevitably, like what happened to me 2 years later now, maybe I'm not 100% him, but I'm a way closer version of that vision, that best version of myself that I created in my head, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yep. So you're just competing with that
Correct.
version you created. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yo, Marcel,
yo,
how young were you when you started? Because I'm 16 right now. Do you think I'm starting too early, or yeah?
no, bro. You're not starting too early. I mean, I started when I was 22, but that's because I was just fucking around and partying and drinking and being retarded basically until I was 22. So you're not starting too young, and don't let anyone tell you that. But obviously things can be a bit harder when you're 16 because people listen to their parents when they're younger, things of this nature. But it is what it is, bro. I think if you can start taking steps now, by the time you're 18, then you'll be in an amazing position, bro. But we'll keep questions to the end. I'm going to do a Q&A at the end, but I really want to get through this and make sure you guys are present throughout the entire thing. All right. So once we've established a vision, right? We've got the version of ourselves that we want to be. We've got the vision of our lives that we want to live. Now it's time to start to work towards it, right? So I honestly think casting the vision and casting that alter ego of yourself should take probably 1 to 2 days, because it's something that you need like extreme clarity on, right? Like I remember when I did it, I knew the car I wanted, I knew the house I wanted, I had like mood boards and shit of everything. Like my life that I live right now, I literally had it on mood boards. I had the cars, I had like the villas, I had the countries even that I would travel to and that I've lived in on those things. So it's like, if you can not only have the vision, but like actually have like visual representations of the type of life you want, that's going to allow you to get to it, right? So take time on that. I would spend the next 1 to 2 days getting really clear on the vision for you and the vision for your life, right? But then we can start to work towards it. So let's do it. Now, like I said, all of you guys right here, right now, your visions will be different and your goals will be different. But who here wants to be rich? Who here wants to have money? Everyone, right?
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay, so everyone wants money. Everyone wants freedom. So let's make it happen. Now, in order to get wealthy, we need to understand how the rich look at money and how they understand money and where the difference is to something between these people, right? So why is it that one person can walk into a Gucci store and buy a $3,000 bag and it's cheap, but for most of you, spending $3,000, $5,000 on a bag is incredibly expensive? Like, why is it that you couldn't imagine yourself doing that, yet some people do it like it's nothing, right? It's because wealthy people don't measure money off how much things cost. That's $3,000. That's fucking expensive. They measure money based off the amount of time and labor they needed to input in order to make the money. Right? So what makes something cheap or expensive isn't the price, but it's the amount of time and energy that we put into it, right? So the question shouldn't be, how can I afford this? But it is, how can I make more money for less work and less time spent, right? Because right now, you guys here are probably trading an hour of your time for $10 to $30, all right? So minimum wage in the States is like $10. An apprentice wage is like $10 to $15. A lot of people think $30 is even a good wage, right? When I was working as a qualified tradesman, I was making $30 an hour and I was still broke. Right? I still had no money saved at the end of the week. But let's do some math, okay? So can you become a millionaire on $10 an hour? $10 an hour times 40 hours a week times 52 weeks is $20,000. Your annual savings of the year would be $819 a year, right? So the summary is at $10 an hour full time, you lose $800 a year on a bare bones budget once you factor in living expenses, right? So if you're making $10 an hour, or if you're making minimum wage right now, you will never be a millionaire, right? It's statistically impossible. Even at $30 an hour, without all your expenses and all your travel factored in, it would still take you 40 plus years, right? And we don't want to wait that long. We want to be wealthy as quickly as possible, right? So it's literally impossible for you guys to become a millionaire right now doing what you're doing right now. So is it fair to say that something has to change? Right? If we want to get to our goal, if we want to be rich, then we have to change the way we think about money. We have to change the way we're making money. We have to find something that is scalable so we're not trading 1 hour of our time, keeping in mind that our time is the most valuable thing that we have because it's something that we can't get back, and your hour right now is worth $10 to $30 an hour, right? Not only is that like disrespectful to you as a human, but it also puts you in a position where you're pretty much going to be broke for your entire life. So how do we fix this problem? The first thing we need to do is stop trading our time for money, right? Because as long as we're trading our time for money, we're going to be broke. But what else can we trade? Right now, I want you guys to pay attention because what I'm about to go into now is pretty much the mindset shift that made me realize I can't keep working a construction job or a job in general, and I need to actually change the life how I'm making my money, right? So we can trade 3 things: time, a product, or a service. So let's look at these 3 things in comparison. Services is when we're trading us doing something, our labor, our manpower, our sweat, our time for money, right? So if you're working as a chippy, or you're working in a construction job, or you're doing something like that, or you're providing a service to someone like cutting down trees or cleaning gutters or whatever it may be, you're trading your time, sweat, and labor for money, right? We've already established it doesn't solve our problem. It doesn't help us make any more money. Now, physical products is stuff like e-commerce, right? Selling clothes, selling food, selling shoes, health stuff, fitness stuff, supplements, whatever it may be. Now, physical products, they still require time, right? They have to be manufactured, they have to be made, they have to be shipped. There's a fulfillment component, right? So once again, you're still now, it's less trading your time for money because you can set up fulfillment centers and stuff like this, right? All to just make 20% profit margins. You're making very low profit margins. So the third thing is then digital products, right? So subscriptions, even something like OF could be considered, like you're selling photos, that's a digital product. Information, consulting, Netflix is a digital product. These are all digital products, right? Now, the issue with physical products, like we spoke about, is you're only going to be getting 10 to 30% profit margins. Your upfront capital required is you're going to have to actually source the product, spend money on the products. Then you have to fulfill it. Then you have shipping. Then you have refunds. You need to find suppliers. And now, after people have been doing this for quite some time, even the competition in the ad space is very difficult. You're competing with a bunch of different people who are promoting similar stuff. Then the scalability as well is limited, right? So how do we resolve this issue of physical products? We resolve it with digital products, okay? So now, with digital products, these are things like coaching, consulting, mentorships, courses, and what we call this is info, right? You're selling info, you're selling knowledge, you're selling something that you can create once and now it just lives forever, right? This is by far the best and the most scalable way to make money. This is why. It's really just a 3-step business model. And it's as simple as acquiring knowledge or skill sets, then gaining attention, and then teaching others those things, right? So it's information that you have in your head that you can synthesize into something consumable, meaning you don't need suppliers. You don't need a new unit every time someone buys something. Like if you were selling hoodies, we don't need a new hoodie every time someone buys something. We literally just create it once and we can sell it infinite times. You only need 1 unit for endless customers, right? You keep 80 to 90% profit. The startup costs are low, as it's just information in your head and knowledge in your head. It's the most scalable thing. It's automated delivery, and it's the closest thing that we're going to get to passive income, right? Everyone's like, how can I make passive income? It's not really a real thing, but this is the closest that you're going to get, right? Now, you might be sitting there thinking, what the fuck do I sell? What do I know? I don't have any knowledge. I don't have any information. You can sell literally anything, right? We've seen people sell how to quit addictions. I've literally seen people making 6 figures a month selling how to quit addictions. I've seen an old lady make 10K a month selling knitting. You can sell how to play piano, how to not be fat, fitness coaching. That's a super common one. How to make money, how to make content, everything, right? Once you have one of these, once you have information or a skill set or something to sell, then all you need is attention, right? And that is super simple. All you do is post content, gain attention, then you have eyeballs, and now you have people to sell that knowledge to, right? Then you simply just educate those people on how to do what you've done, right? And you might be sitting there thinking, well, I'm not good enough at anything to fucking teach someone. But the beautiful thing with info is you don't need to be a level 100 to teach someone. You can be a level 5 and you can teach a level 1, right? Because let's take fitness coaching, for example. If you've made a transformation and you went from fat to jacked, right? And now you're jacked. You don't have to have like the perfect physique. If someone's fat and you know how to get them lean and muscular, they don't really care about anything else, but can you get them the result? And you can, right? So you don't have to have the perfect physique, or you don't have to have all the information. It's like, can you teach someone what they want to learn? And that's all that matters, right? So now, do we understand the different ways to make money, how money works, these things here that we covered, the different sorts of money-making activities, and why only the really scalable thing is selling digital products, right? Because if we sell physical products, we got to have, even like I know so many people in e-com now that they're struggling because of the tariffs. It gets techie really quickly, right? And we already know it's physically impossible for us to become millionaires if we're trading our time for money around that $20 to $30 range, right? So now that we know that, now that we know the different ways to make money and why this is the most scalable one, this is by far the only way to solve that initial issue that we had of trading our time for money. And remember how I said rich people measure money differently, right? How does this apply to selling knowledge, right? Because like we spoke about, a typical price point for coaching, consulting, mentorship, etc. is around $5,000. Okay? $5,000. This is a $90,000 day date rollie, right? It's $90K. So I don't know if any of you could afford this right now. There's a guy flexing, he's watching here before, he might be able to afford it. But I don't know if you guys can afford this right now, but would you consider it expensive?
Yes.
Okay. You would consider expensive. Why though?
I don't have that money right now.
And you don't have that money right now. Why?
Because of how much time it takes.
Because your hours not worth enough. So in order for you to buy this watch, it would probably take you years because of the time and input required, right? So person A, you, in order for you to buy this watch, it would take you 3 years of full-time work, not including your expenses. You guys probably know if you're working a job and you're making around that, your money goes quick and you're not left with anything at the end of the week. So it says 3 years, that's not including expenses. Including expenses, you're probably never buying it, right? Even if you could get to it, you'd probably put it into a house or something, right? Person B, be it a fitness coach or someone selling knowledge where they can get $5,000 in a 1 hour long sales call, it's less than 2 full work days for them to buy that watch, right? So person A works 3 years to not be able to afford it, and person B works less than 2 days. Same watch, massively different cost in time and energy spent in order to get it, right? So this is why we can't measure money based off how much things cost, but we need to measure it based off our time and energy put into it, right? And then we realize by understanding that the only way for us to start to get freedom, to get wealth, to get the life that we want is by having a more valuable hour, is by getting more money per hour. And the only way to do that is to become more valuable, is to learn new skills, is to be someone who can actually now demand more for their hour because of the information and the knowledge that you've accumulated in your head. I don't want you guys to get lost. So in order for you to start making more money, we need to be more valuable, right? Because look at what you're doing right now for work, whether you're a tradie, whether you work in retail, whatever it may be. I remember listening to someone speak about these concepts in my AirPods when I was literally filling buckets up with mud on a job site. And they were saying, you need to be the best at what you do. You need to have different skills. You need to have something that allows you to not trade your time for money. Look at what you're doing right now. Anyone can do that. You're replaceable. You're not doing anything special. You have no real value. You have no real knowledge or information in your head that's redeemable in any way, right? So I looked at what I was doing and I said, anyone can do this. Literally a fucking robot could do this. So why would I ever stack wealth? Why would I ever become someone with money? Why would I ever, get rich if I'm doing something that literally anyone can do? There's nothing special about me, right? So in order to increase how much we get paid per hour, we need to be more valuable. We need to be more knowledgeable. This is why you see motherfuckers out there like Tate and all these other guys. They're buying a new supercar every other month because they're selling their knowledge and they're able to make thousands and tens of thousands of dollars every hour, which makes everything incredibly cheap. Does that make sense? None of this shit is expensive to them because every hour they're making thousands of dollars. Right? If we were making thousands of dollars every hour, now everything's fucking free pretty much. Okay? All we need to do is figure out, how do we become that person? How do we become the person that's actually generating thousands of dollars every hour? Okay? We understand how to now make money with the least time and energy spent, and it's by selling our information, selling our knowledge, selling skills and stuff that we've developed, right? So here are the few key skills and few key things that we need to understand in order to be able to execute on this properly, right? The number one thing we need, the number one skill we need is the ability to sell, right? How are we going to sell knowledge? And this applies for not only knowledge, it applies for if we're going to sell a physical product, if we're going to sell a digital product, if we're going to sell a service, if we're going to do literally anything, we need this number one skill, which is the ability to sell, right? You've probably seen me talk about it in my content, but I tried to start a social media marketing agency where you're selling ads for companies, right? I couldn't succeed at that because how am I going to succeed at that if I don't know how to, one, run ads, two, how to actually sell the service, right? So we need the ability to sell because now you're always selling your parents, you're selling, I know there's a 16-year-old here, you're selling your parents on being able to do this, you're selling your partner on staying with you, you're always selling. It's the number one skill, not only to be able to make money in perpetuity, but it's the number one skill to life in general, right? The quality of your communications dictate the quality of your life. If you do not know how to communicate, if you don't know how to persuade, if you don't know how to talk to people, and you're just like socially awkward, then you're not going to excel in anything ever, right? Let alone business, right? So number one skill that we need to develop is the ability to sell. The second skill we need is then the ability to gain attention, right? This is like all the stuff on posting content, all the stuff on building a personal brand, because the first thing is being able to sell it. The second thing is, who do we now sell it to, right? Now, this is also, once again, the same for a physical product, the same for a service, the same for literally anything in business ever, is we need people to actually sell it to, right? One, we need the ability to sell. Two, we need the ability to find people to sell it to, right? The ability to gain attention, this is all the videos I talk about content creation, personal branding, stuff like that. You can go explore that on my YouTube. You can go watch my free personal branding course or just any of my content in general. The third thing is then the ability to educate and lead, because once you've got the ability to sell, you've got the eyeballs, now we actually need to educate these people and teach them something, and we also need to be able to lead them to a desirable outcome. Okay. Fourth thing is, these are like your technical skills that we're actually going to apply to what we're doing. These are more like traits, right? The ability to be resilient, especially if you're getting into entrepreneurship. The number one thing is being able to bounce back from adversity, being able to keep persisting throughout everything and continue pushing forward, right? The ability to be intentional, like we spoke about in the beginning. We do things for a reason. We know why we're doing this. Stems from your vision and your goals, like we spoke about. Your ability to decide why you're doing things and then to show up every day and do those things. Right? The sixth thing is the ability to be proactive, not reactive. Once again, it kind of comes back to the same thing. Are we doing things or are things happening to us? You can decide what happens in your life. You can choose. And if you start making moves intentionally, you're now being proactive, not reactive. Number 7 is the ability to build relationships. I know someone asked a question on my Instagram live about like networking and stuff, right? How do we actually build relationships and build connections with people so that we have a good network, we have a good group of people around us that actually push us and get us to where we need to be? This is based on the foundation of everything else we covered today, right? No one wants to be friends with someone that provides no value. No one wants to be friends with just a normal person at the higher level. So all the guys that I'm around now and all the guys that I work with, we all went through a period of isolation where we locked ourselves away and we just focused and we just learned and we just tried to become someone of value. Now we're all friends. Now we all work together. Now we all help each other. But that's because we went through that period of becoming someone worth being around, right? We all know you become some of the 5 people you spend the most time with. We know that, right? But then why do we go spend time around a bunch of people that aren't where the fuck we want to be or aren't beneficial to our lives, or people that go out, drink, party, fuck around, right? What we need to do in order to start to be around better people, because if you're sitting in your mom's basement and you're not making any money and then you're like, oh, I'm going to go network, it doesn't make any sense, right? And people even message me on Instagram and they're like, let's connect. But they've got no profile picture and they've got 50 followers, right? It doesn't make sense, right? So networking is an equal value exchange. So the first step to being able to build good relationships and actually start to make moves and really start to level up your circle and level up your life is building that value yourself first. So for all of you guys here today, it's like, 1, casting that vision, knowing what you want to work towards and why you want to work towards it. 2, breaking that down into a plan. What skills do I need to learn? The ability to sell, the ability to gain attention, the ability to convert that attention, right? Then it's just locking yourself away in a room. Fuck networking, fuck hanging out, fuck everything. Let me just sit in a room and now build that value, build those skill sets. And honestly, these skill sets do not take a lot of time. I think it took me 1 to 2 months to learn sales. I think it took me 1 month to get good at content, right? They don't take long to learn, but you just need to lock yourself away, start to develop the skill sets that allow you to become valuable. Another really, really good way to build relationships and start to be around better people is content, is building your personal brand. Because I remember when I was a sales rep, I was making $12,000 a month. As soon as I started posting content, all the people that I watched online for the last 2-3 years started reaching out to me. You don't have to be the guy that's in people's DMs, oh, let's connect. You can be the guy where there is people that you've been watching for the last 2 years coming to you saying, yo, let's connect, your content's dope. And now it's like an equal value exchange because you're both killers, right? So it always comes back down to you building your own value up, building your own personal brand up, and then you can start to connect with better people, right? This is pretty much how to get what you want from life, right? So the main thing, the first thing that we need to focus on is building the vision, casting the vision, understanding what we want and why. And this doesn't have to be driven by money. This can be driven by looking after your family. This can be driven by making an impact, right? But downstream of that, we all know it's going to come to, even in order to make an impact, even in order to influence people, you're going to need finances. You're going to need money. We established that doing what we're doing right now isn't working and it's impossible for us to become a millionaire by doing that, right? So how do we fix the problem? Services, trading our time for money, Physical products are out of the question, so we're going to do it with digital products. How do we do it with digital products? We do it by selling our knowledge, our information, our skill sets. If you don't have any knowledge or any skill sets right now, which I do think you guys probably do, even if you don't, now it's just sitting down and going and learning a skill and then being able to provide value to the marketplace with that. Let's use me for an example. What did I do? I was working in construction. I was useless. I was broke. I was a fucking idiot, right? I went out and I spent 2 months learning the skill of sales, right? I got the ability to sell. And then for the next 8 months, I was just a sales rep. That's all I did. I got really good at sales. I got to 12K a month in sales. And I went, hold on, these people that I'm selling these coaching, this consulting, these mentorships for, I was selling an e-commerce mentorship. I was making him like 300, 400K a month. And I was making 12K a month. What was the only difference between me and him? He was making the content and he was selling the knowledge, and I was a sales rep selling it. Does this mean don't be a sales rep? No. Sales is amazing. But I could see that and I was like, the only gap is that he's posting content and I'm not. So what did I do? I started posting content. Around the skills that I had accumulated, which was sales, a bunch of people that wanted to learn sales said, this guy knows sales, this guy's talking about it. Then I was able to sell my knowledge, sell my sales experience, and that was something that was scalable. You know what I mean? So then I became the guy who was making tens of thousands of dollars every week, right? So that's how I would go about it. That's what I did, and I hope that provides some value to you guys. If you guys have any questions, fire away.
Yeah, just a quick one. So for me currently, like I have a plan for this year, 2025 plan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the issue I encounter is I get overwhelmed on the different goals I have, because how I structure my plan was my area 1, which is finances, and then the second area, my relationships and social, and the third is like my personal growth and health. So there's like 3 facets,
Yep.
you can call them. But now I'm just overwhelmed. I'm like, what the hell like do I start with? You know, like I have make 10K a month as a financial goal, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm just like confused on like how to break that up, like if that makes sense.
How to break it up on how to actually make 10K, or how to break it up in regards to between fitness, financial, and like...
Yes, exactly. How to balance them together, because I don't want to be a person who makes 10K a month, makes a lot of money, but then he can't even talk to anyone because he has no friends.
Yeah.
I'll be depressed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay, so what I did with that was... You need to become regimented and understand how you're going to allocate your time in order to become the person you want to be. It's good that you want to focus on not just being like an introvert and making money and just like sitting in a screen for 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
I do think in order for you to get an exceptional result, 10K is not exceptional, but it's a starting goal.
Yeah,
but in order for you to get that result, right, you're going to have to do something relatively different. So I think there comes times in life when it's okay for us to get a little bit unbalanced. When people get unbalanced and they start becoming obsessed with something and really focused on something, a lot of times it's too much for them and it breaks them, right? I've seen it happen to people where they don't get to do their evening run and now they start to fall apart and then they just give up, right?
Mm.
What I did, because obviously I just want to advise you from a credible source, being myself, because I've done it, I would literally lock myself in a room, take sales calls for probably 5 to 10 hours a day. And I felt like that was me like developing, right? Because it's not like I'm becoming socially awkward by being on sales calls. If anything, I'm training myself. So I was training myself socially to be better. I was working towards my vision. And then the only other thing I needed to do in the day was go lift, go train. And I still did that, because you've always got... People say, oh, I'm focused on this, I can't go train. A lot of people that we've trained are like, oh, I stopped going to gym because... I'm like, you said you can't find an hour in your day. Like, you can find an hour in your day, right? So I would just say, set aside a specific amount of time to do the tasks that you need to do in order to get to 10K. And then set aside a specific amount of time to spend on your body or spend on your mind or whatever it may be. And then just stick to that and get regimented with it. Like we spoke about before, it's your vision but then breaking that vision down into a plan, right? So we know exactly what we have to do each day, day by day, in order to achieve this vision. So how are you going about making 10K a month?
For me,
Yeah.
well, I'm applying for like I'm part of like a high ticket bridge, like a community where they post like job opportunities for closing positions. So I set aside like apply for 5 sales jobs per day, and I'll just do that on a constant basis.
Good. How's that working?
Um, it's pretty shit because I've only applied for 2, so I find it very hard to apply for 5. I just don't find the time, so I have a bit of a time management issue.
Right. Are you working full time?
Yeah, no, I'm working part time. I'm working as a BDM,
Got
a
you.
business development manager.
Okay, so you're working part time, and then because this is obviously like a huge thing with people, and a huge thing is like my time. It makes sense, but it doesn't, right? Because it's like I always say, successful people are built in discontentment and dissatisfaction. I was working like 10-hour days in construction, and I had an hour drive before that and an hour drive after that. I'd wake up at like 5 in the morning, drive an hour, work for 10 hours, finish in the afternoon, drive home for another hour, gym, eat. What the fuck else do I like? It's 8 p.m. now. My whole day's gone. But when you hate your position, when you fucking can't stand to keep living there, and that dissatisfaction's there, and that discontentment's there, you do what the fuck you need to do in order to fix it, right? So even back then, I was in the same community that I'm in now. There was one training a week, and then it was on a Saturday at 11, and then the closer trainings, like the active closer trainings, were at 2 a.m. Australian time. 2 a.m.,
shit.
right? And I wasn't even an active closer, right? So I don't even know if I was a setter at this point. I think I was a setter. And I was like, one training a week isn't enough for me to get to where I want to be. Can I come to the active closer trainings even though I'm not a closer? And they said yes. They're like, it's at 2 a.m., so like, why the fuck do you want to come? I said, I don't give a shit. I set an alarm. I would get home, train. I'd go to bed at like 9. I would set an alarm to wake up at 2 a.m. I would wake up at 2 a.m., go to the closer training. Then another hour would go past, and then I would go to work and work the construction job and repeat. So every morning I was up at 2 a.m. sitting on a closer training when I'm not even a fucking closer, because I had the idea that I would gain enough knowledge, and by even just making my face in there, they would start to look at me as someone who should be a closer. I ended up getting a closing role. Boom, the rest is history, right? So I think it comes from, if you're dissatisfied and you're discontent and you hate where you're at, you're going to find the fucking time. Whether it's while you're sleeping, whether it's while you're fucking working. I remember when I was an appointment setter, it's a funny story because I got an appointment setting role and I was working in construction, and like this fucking construction company hated me because I was retarded. I was like underqualified. But I would be on the job site on my phone, and they thought like, oh, he's always on his phone, he's always texting XYZ. But I was setting appointments, and then they were getting up me and they were telling me like, you got to get off your fucking phone. The last day I was setting appointments, someone came up to me and they're like, oh, you're going to get fired because you're always on your phone, you're a shit worker, XYZ. And I hated this fucking job. So I was like, I bet. I left the job that day, and then that was the first day I got paid for appointment setting. I made $600. And I was like, when I sat in my car and I drove home, I was like, I'm not fucking going back. I'm not going back. I know they don't want me there. So I didn't even hand in my 2 weeks. I just drove home, didn't speak to them again, never went back. No one ever called me. No one ever gave a fuck. And now we're here, right? But that's simply a factor of, if you want it and you're like actually obsessed with it, you're going to find the time. And then for you, it almost sounds like you're not being as efficient with the time that you have as you could be, right? Because I don't know if you've had training or you're in any type of community for your sales stuff, but it's like you were doing the same thing that I was doing in the beginning. I just got into 2 Facebook groups, and I just started reaching out for roles. And I was just like, someone hire me, someone hire me. No one wanted to hire me. And I was like, oh, no one wants to hire me because I'm an untrained, unexperienced sales rep with no connections. Why the fuck should I get hired? 2 things to start improving your ability and your chances to get a role is get training, get connected, and get, obviously your personal brand helps. So those 3 things would really help you with having more authority when you're reaching out for roles, is having training, being someone worth hiring, having like good connections, because my roles didn't come from outreach. My roles came from the connections I made through my network and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay. But how did you build the connections? Was that through your communities, like the
Correct.
training
So
community?
when I first started in sales, I was doing what you were doing, just reaching out, outreach. No one wanted to hire me. Someone
Yeah.
saw me outreaching and they were like, "Yo, are you trying to get into sales, XYZ?" I said, "Yes." We jumped on a call. He pitched me on training me and being my mentor. He had a sales agency at the time. I gave him all the money in my account, which was fucking nothing. It was like 1,800 Australian, I think. And that was like part of the high ticket because obviously it was way more than that, but that was all I had. And then yeah, like I said, over the next couple of months, he just trained me up. I got good, and I also got the connections that I needed in order to succeed. But that's just some from my perspective of what you're doing right now. What I would change and what I would do to try to optimize it, bro. But shoot me a DM on IG, and I'll send you some voice messages about like just tell me where you're at, and I'll send you some voice messages about how you can start to try to move things forward. One, be more effective with your time, and two, things forward with your sales because you don't want to be outreaching for the next fucking year. You want to be in a role and be stacking commissions sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I was watching a video on the full high ticket sales course, the one you made on YouTube,
Yeah.
and I saw one point you mentioned was a lack of urgency. So I feel like that can apply to many people as well. It's like lack of urgency. Like if you're already making a job 9 to 5, you can just be saying to yourself, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm making the money." But like you need to put that pressure to say like, "No, this actually needs to happen this month. Like I need to lock in." So
100%. Yeah.
yeah,
Every successful person ever have one common trait, and it's a sense of urgency, right? So if you can develop the ability to have the mindset where it's like, I do it now, I do it now, I do it now. You have a task to do, you do it now, right? That's one sense, is like day by day, but then there's also another sense of urgency where it's like, do you really want to keep fucking living this bullshit ass life because you do it and you accept it and you don't have that sense of urgency? Then you wake up one day and you're 35 years old and you've still not got any money and you still hate your situation and you're still putting off taking action, right? So it's like, have a sense of urgency with getting to your vision. And once again, this is why it comes back to what we talked about in the beginning on your vision. That's where the urgency stems from. That's where the sense of urgency stems from. Because if you don't know what you want, and like you said, you don't have that anti-vision, it's like, if you don't know what you don't want and you don't know what you do want, how can you have a sense of urgency? But if you can see it clearly and you're like, yo, I know what the fuck I want and I know how I'm going to get it, think about how much harder and how much more urgent you would start to be with doing the work. I remember when I was just getting started, I started to make some good money and I started to be like, holy shit, I'm getting freedom here. I'm starting to see it and I'm like, I'm going to be able to go here and there. And then it's like, once I could see the vision and I could, like, I'd already made the money, like I could see the plan working. Fuck, I think about the urgency that kicks in when you do that. So right now, it's hard for you to really feel that urgency because you're kind of just fucking around, you're working a job, you're also trying to like get a sales role. But when you really start to feel the urgency is when you have the clear vision, you're in the sales role and your commission, your income is steadily scaling, then you're like, fucking, then you can turn the jets on. You know what I mean? But if you guys take anything away from today, I would just let it be like, spend the next 1 to 2 days really sitting down with yourself. Don't sit on social media, don't scroll, don't do anything. If you don't know why you're going to use it, don't even have it on your phone. Sit in your room, stare at the ceiling with a piece of paper and write down those two things. Like exactly what you want to be like and who you want to be, the impact you want to make, everything, and then exactly what you want your life to look like. 1 to 2 days from now, you should have super, super clear data on both of those things. Boom, sit down. How the fuck am I going to get that now? How am I actually going to get to a point where I'm making $1 million a month? How am I actually going to make that happen? Right? And like I said, it's going to come down to your habits, what you're doing day by day, to your beliefs, right? Do you believe it's actually possible? Do you believe you're the type of person who gets up every day and actually moves the needle forward and does the work? Your traits and your skill sets. Do you have the skills to even make that money, right? So that's what I would focus on for all you guys now is like, get clear on it. When you need the plan and you need to figure out how to do it, that's what I'm here for, right? That's what I just spent explaining to you. There's really one way to scale the fuck out of your income super quickly, and it's selling knowledge. And how you're going to do that is by, once, focusing on the skills first, right? It doesn't make sense for you to try to sell info right now. It doesn't make sense for you to go try to fucking start a drop shipping company. It doesn't make sense for you guys to do fucking anything if we don't know how to sell. Oliver, good job on you trying to get a sales role because you're going towards that first initial skill that we need. Like I said, the ability to sell. The second thing is the ability to garner attention, right? The third thing is the ability to teach and educate, right? So before we do anything, vision, then we focus on the skill sets, and now we synthesize the skill sets into a knowledge-based business where we're selling the skills that we learn and the knowledge that we have accumulated to people so we can scale our income, thus we can achieve our vision. And then once we're in that position, we can fucking focus on our passions like this, like helping you guys, helping people, posting content that actually shifts perspectives and gets people to understand how the world really works, what things really look like, and how to fix these problems. So that's it for tonight, guys. I'm probably going to start doing these weekly, so I hope to see you guys all back here next week. I will be doing it slightly differently. I wanted to cover like vision, how we should think about money, how it actually works, and stuff like that. And then in the weeks following, I'll start to go into more technical stuff. How do you sell? How do you get a sales role? How do you actually work with digital products? How do you start to build your personal brand, content game, and stuff like that? But that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Marcel. I appreciate that.
This will probably be on my YouTube, guys, if you also want to go watch it back. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you, Oliver. Thank you guys for coming. God bless. I'll see you guys soon. Appreciate the support, everyone, as well.